Welcome to the Learn to Sew Academy channel. Please remember to subscribe. Thank you.
Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. We're going to be making a skirt. It's going to start off as a straight skirt, as you can see here in my diagram. And then at the bottom of it, we're going to have 8 different layers, and we're going to be making it with different fabric. We'll have one fabric for the old top. At the back, we're going to have zippers because this is going to just be like a straight skirt. And you can watch my video on how to make a straight skirt to have a better understanding of what goes on around here. But I'm also going to attempt to explain it to you as much as possible. So down here, we're going to have the same fabric, but we're going to be alternating it with another plain fabric. And altogether here, I have about 8 different layers. How you calculate your measurements when you start to cut your fabric, as I've explained in prior videos before now, you are cutting your fabric on the fold. So for the waist, we're going to be dividing by 4. And again, I have an extensive explanation in my video on how to make a straight skirt. You may want to watch that. I'm going to leave a link in the description, and I'm going to also leave a link on the video if you're using a mobile device. So we're going to divide the waist by 4, and we're going to divide the hip by 4. And as I always explain, the reason you do this is because when you took the measurement of your waist and your hip, you went around the body. You took a total body circumference. And so when you fold it, you're going to be cutting them folded into 4 different layers. So that is why we're going to be dividing by 4. And then down here for the waist, we're going to have a dot to help us shape the waist area. So I'm going to have 1 inch for that. Then for my seam allowance, I'm going to be having 1 inch for seam allowance. Now this right here is just for one portion of the fold. Remember, we are dividing by 4 here. So each fold is what we have here. So for each fold, we're going to have 11.5 for the waist, and we're going to be having 11.75 for the hip. The skirt length remains the same. You don't need to divide that. It remains the same. However, because of this style, we'll need to know from the waist down to where we'll start the layers what you want it to be. And this will be just above your knee. You don't want it to be below your knee, because in that case you may not be able to walk freely. So whatever you measure for yourself or whoever you're making this for, you want to go from the waist to above the knee. And it will be different for different people, because some people are taller than others. So you may want to measure this. But over here, I'm going to be using 20.5. And because my skirt length, the total skirt length is going to be 41. If I take this 20.5 away from the 41, I'm going to be left with 20.5. So in this case, I'm going to have 20.5 for my straight skirt portion, and the rest of it is going to be 20.5. So we're going to be using this 2 fabric. This is going to be the main skirt, and we're going to be using this for the layers. So like I said, we're just simply going to be making the first step like we're doing a skirt, a regular pencil skirt. So to do that, I'm just folding this in. So I'm going to be folding this into 4 layers. So I'll first fold it like so into 2. And then I'll fold it again. But while you're folding, you want to be measuring and making sure you have enough folded for half of your hip, plus your sewing allowance, and for you plus your zipper. The hip we're using here is 43, so that's gonna be 21.5. All right, and then I'm going to consider if I have enough for the zip allowances and the seam allowances. So once you're folded into 2, you want to fold it again so that you have 4 layers of fabric. And then again, like I mentioned, you keep measuring to make sure that your fold is enough for your hip measurement. Hip is the biggest area of the lower body measurement. So that's why we're using the hip measurement, because we have 43 for that. The waist was 38. So that's why we're using the 43. As you fold, you want to remember that you're going to leave a zip allowance for the back. So now I'm gonna start measuring for the way you will measure for a regular pencil skirt. So what I'm gonna do first is, just because I have a lot of fabric, I want to cut out just the portion I need. And then we know that, like I mentioned when I was explaining with the diagram, that I need for the upper part, I need 20.5. So I'm going to leave half an inch for where I'm going to be joining it back to the other layers, and I'm going to have half an inch at the top. This is going to be a bandless skirt, so I'll just have half an inch at the bottom, half an inch at the top. Altogether I'm looking at 21.5. So I'm going to cut off 21.5 from this real quick. And I'll just cut this out. And if it works better for you, you can just put a straight line, if that will help you better to make sure everything is really straight. So I'm going to cut that part out. Okay, so now we're going to start to measure for our hip, our waist, and everything else. So what we're going to be doing is, I'm going to start to measure from this middle right here, and I'm just going to put a cut here just to help you to identify where the middle is. This right here is going to be the front, and where we have the opening here is going to be our back. This is our zip allowance right here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start from the center of the skirt. We already divided this into 4 when we did our calculations. So for the waist, we're going to need 11.5 from the calculations we made earlier. And have it in mind, the 11.5 already incorporates into it. It already has the allowances. The 11.5 that I'm measuring here from our measurement. You can go back to the beginning and you see it, or you can check my video on making a pencil skirt. Is really detailed, so you can check that too. So this is 11.75. Now I'm going to measure the hip too, but to do that I'm going to go from up here where I have the waistline, and I'm gonna do 8 inches. And this too, some people would do between 7 to 9 inches. It depends on each individual. So I'm going to do 8 inches, but remember that up here I have half an inch that I'm going to be using to turn it over. So because of that, I'm going to do 8.5 from that top right there. And that is my 8.5. I hope you can see it. This is just for me to know where to start to measure for the hip. So again, we're starting from the middle. So I'll measure after we added all the allowances, added the seam allowance, we arrived at 11.75. So I'm going to look for 11.75, which is right here. Remember when we did this, we added 1 inch for the dart, for the waist when we were calculating our measurement, and we added 1 inch for the seam allowance. So I'm going to just leave a cut. I'm going to snip it right there for where our dart is going to be, and that's going to be at the 4.5 mark. So I'm going to put 4.5 mark right here, and I'm using 4.5 because I want it to be 4 inches from the center when we are done. So what we're going to be doing for the dart is we're going to be holding it in, half on one side, half on the other side. That will take away that 1 inch for the dart, and that will leave us with 4 inches from the center. So that is why I'm using 4.5. I'm just going to snip that just to know where the dart is. And then at the bottom here, I'm going to reduce what I have for my hip measurement. I'm going to reduce it by 1 inch because I want it to have the pencil shape at the bottom here before I put the other layers. So for over here, I had 11.75. So at the bottom here, I'm going to do 10.75. So I'm using all these different markers, hoping that you see what I'm doing. And the next thing is to connect from here to the waistline. And I always say, you can also use your cuff ruler to help you to do that even better. You can use any of your cuff rulers to help you with that. And a hip cuff will do a really perfect job. So if you have one, and if you don't have one, you can simply just use your free hand and just gently connect it. That will work as well. So all we do is just to cut that, and we're done with the first part of the skirt. So the next part is for us to now start to do the layers. Now when we do the layers, we want to remember what we have here. This is 10.75 at the bottom. This is where the layers are going to start to be formed. And then our layers, we're going to make them flared. They're not just going to be straight. We're going to make them to have some flare in it. Now to cut the flare, we're just going to fold it like a triangle, like that. And then remember that the bottom was 10.75. So what I want to do now is I want to measure 10.75 across. But as I make this flare, I'm going to be leaving a little because I'm going to be putting very tiny, almost negligible pleats in them. And the more the further down the layers are, the more pleats I'm going to put, just to make it to have more room and to make it to look bigger than the top. But the length are all going to be the same. I'm hoping to get a length of 4.5 for each of the layers, but then the width of them are going to be getting bigger as I go along. So I want to get 10.75, but I'm going to just add a little more. So right here I have like 11.75. So that's what I'm going to work with. So that's what I have here. I'm just going to try and make it a little curvy. Okay, I have almost 12. I'm going to leave it at that. And then like I said, I need 4.5 after all the sewing is done. And the way you can do this, the layers, you can either just at the bottom of it, you can either just use like a rolled hem, or you can either just do like an overlocking at the end and leave it like that, or you just roll it up twice, like double hem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be leaving 1/2 inch for the top, where we're going to be joining it back to the skirt and the prior layers. So that gives me 5. And then for the bottom, I'll do 1/2 inch for that. So altogether, I'm going to have 5.5. I'm just going to measure that all across. And the way this has been folded, this is just for one part of it. So I'm going to join them all together so that I can have a continuous flow. That's what I'm going to be doing with this. So now we just cut this out. So now I'm just going to be using this to add more to the layers. I'm just going to be extending them by 1 or 1.5 inches more, or 2 inches. It's totally dependent on what each person wants to do. So I'm just going to be extending them like that. But for each layer, I'm going to make 2. So I still need to make one of this. I'm just going to open this real quick to let you see what it looks like. I'm gonna move this out of the way so you can see. So this is what I'm gonna be having. This is what I'm gonna be having. Something like this. And at the bottom of it, I'm going to have another one that looks like this, but that is a bit longer, just a little bit longer. And that is going to be at the bottom of this, which I'll show you. So maybe I'll just cut this first so I can quickly show you, so you have an idea of what we're trying to do here. This is going to be the next layer. So we just want to make sure it aligns to the fold, that the fold aligns to each other, with each other. Okay, and then I'm gonna put some extra. I have like 2.5 here. I'm gonna keep it at that. And remember, again, I'm just gonna be using little tiny pleats inside, so that's gonna help us to keep them in place. So I have 2.5. I'm gonna mark my 2.5 here too. So I'm just going to mark this. I'm going to also mark it right there. And again, I'm using the same length for all the layers. Okay, so what I'm just going to be doing is, again, I'm going to make 2 of this because I have a front and a back. So at the end of it, this is what I'm hoping to get. I'm going to be having a lining, so I'm going to be cutting a lining for this. So underneath of this, we're going to have the lining, and this is going to be joined to the lining, so it's going to hold it all in place. So I'm going to have it looking like this. So that's why I'm making the same sizes, because there's going to be a lining under that these are going to be attached to. So it's going to go on like that. I'm going to be alternating it. I'll put another of this fabric down there. So I'm just going to continue to cut more of it, and as I cut, I'm going to be adding some extra more. Since I had a 2.5, I may add 2.5 more, or maybe a little bit more, depending on how much tiny pleats I want to be there as they go down. You know, if I want it to be, you know, much fuller, I may want to put more pleats. So it depends on what you want to do. So that's what I'm going to be doing. But again, for each one, we're going to be making 2 so that we can have them go all across. And you can also opt to do a continuous layer. You can opt to just cut this continuously, but I think this will save me more fabric. If you decide to make a continuous strip of fabric, this is what you can do. So what I've done again is I've folded it like a triangle, but I didn't make it too steep. Okay, so what I did here is, we know that the hip we're using here is 43, and then the bottom of the skirt, because we're making it like a pencil, so the bottom here is 1 inch less than here, or whatever inches. You can do 1.5, whatever you want, but I didn't want it to be too tight, so it's just 1 inch less than what we have here. So this all together will be 42 inches all across like that. So what I'm doing here now with the fabric is, you want to measure your 42 divided by 2, because now we want to make one stretch of fabric, just one strip of fabric for both the front and the back. So you want to divide that 42 by 2, so that will give us 21. So what we're going to do now is, you want to measure that your 21, and you want to make sure it's curved. Okay, this is more than 21, because this is the one for the lower part. I already cut the top, but I just wanted to, I already cut the upper layers, but I just wanted to show you in case you decide to do a continuous strip of fabric. That may take more of your fabric, because you have to keep, folding and cutting, and like this over here will be wasted, except you have something else you want to do with it. So that may take more fabric than the first method I showed you. But in case you want to do it like this is going to be a continuous strip of fabric. So what I did is you measure that 21 right here, and then I measured the 5.5 like that. So I have the 5.5, okay, and then we just cut it. So in this case you just have one fabric, so you just have to make 8 more. Actually you make 3 more in this fabric and 4 in the other fabric. And remember to keep elongating it, making it longer as you cut the bottom fabric, so that they can have that flow all the way down, and they can also have the fullness. So this will be the back, and then the rest of it will just go around the skirt. Thanks for watching. Please see the description for the second part of this video, and please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next video. Thank you.